Welcome back to the Olive Grove podcast. We are diving deep into Daniel chapter 7 today.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a fascinating chapter.
It is.
But honestly, it's also a little freaky.
It's one of those that grabs your attention right away.
It does.
Visions of these crazy beasts,
Right.
this talk about judgment and kingdoms.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not your typical bedtime story.
it is not.
Yeah.
So for those who maybe aren't familiar with this part of the Bible,
Sure.
can you give us a little context? Who was Daniel? Why should we care about his dreams?
Daniel was a Jewish prophet,
Okay.
and he was living in exile in Babylon. And, he was known for his wisdom and his ability to interpret dreams and visions. And that's what makes this chapter so interesting,
Okay.
because he's living in a time when his people are under foreign rule,
Right.
and there's a lot of uncertainty about the future and the visions that he receives.
Yeah.
They're not just random nightmares.
Yeah.
They're messages from God about what's to come,
Oh.
both for his people and for the world.
So it's like God is giving Daniel a sneak peek into the future, a
Exactly.
little glimpse of how things are going to play out on the world stage.
Yeah. And what's amazing is that some of what he saw in these visions has already come to pass,
Right.
which gives us confidence in the reliability of Scripture, and others are still waiting to be fulfilled.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Right.
Daniel's vision starts with him seeing 4 beasts rising out of the Great Sea.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing this isn't some ancient sea monster documentary.
No.
No.
Not quite.
Okay.
The Great Sea, in this context,
Yeah.
symbolizes the Gentile nations, those who are not part of God's covenant people.
Okay.
And those beasts, they represent earthly kingdoms,
Okay.
empires that rise and fall throughout history.
So right off the bat, we're getting this contrast
Yeah.
between God's people and the kingdoms of this world.
Uh,
And these beasts, well, they don't sound very cuddly.
no, they're pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
The first one is described as a lion with eagle's wings.
Wow.
Imagine a creature that combines the power and majesty of a lion
Right.
with the speed and agility of an eagle.
Okay, that's a pretty intense combo.
Yeah.
What kind of empire does that represent?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
You remember that golden head
Uh-huh.
from Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That lion with eagle's wings represents the same empire.
Okay, Babylon.
Babylon,
Yeah.
known for its power and its opulence.
Absolutely.
Symbolized by this fearsome creature.
Yeah.
But then something strange happens, right?
Right.
The wings get plucked off.
Yeah.
The beast is made to stand like a man and given a human heart.
Uh-huh.
What's going on there?
It's almost like a mini redemption arc
Okay.
within this bigger story.
Hmm.
The removal of the wings
Yeah.
signifies Babylon's fall,
Okay.
its power being stripped away.
Right.
And that transformation into a man with a human heart,
Mm-hmm.
that echoes Nebuchadnezzar's own humbling experience in Daniel chapter 4.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. How
Yeah.
he loses his sanity for a time.
Yeah.
Lives like a wild animal until he acknowledges God's sovereignty.
Exactly.
So even this mighty empire,
Yes.
represented by this incredible beast,
Yeah.
ultimately brought low, forced to acknowledge a power greater than itself.
Exactly.
Wow.
It's a reminder that no earthly kingdom,
Right.
no matter how strong or impressive,
Yeah.
can stand against God's ultimate authority.
Okay, so we've seen Babylon rise and fall,
Yes.
represented by this lion-eagle hybrid.
Mm.
What about beast number 2?
Beast number 2 is described as a bear
Okay.
raising itself up on one side
Mm.
and with 3 ribs in its mouth.
Oh, wow.
It's a picture of brute strength and insatiable appetite for conquest.
Okay.
And this bear represents the Medo-Persian Empire,
Okay.
the one that conquered Babylon. And those 3 ribs probably aren't just a random snack, right?
You got it. Okay.
They symbolize the 3 major powers that Medo-Persia conquered:
Mm.
Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a visual representation
Okay.
of their hunger for power and expansion.
So even though they were used by God to bring down Babylon,
Right.
they weren't exactly saints themselves.
Right. They were still driven by
Yeah.
earthly desires for power and dominance. The text even says that the bear was told to get up and gorge yourself with flesh.
Wow. Okay, so on to beast number 3.
Okay.
This one's described as a leopard
Uh-huh.
but with 4 wings and 4 heads.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into some seriously mythological creature territory here.
It definitely gets more bizarre. This beast with its increased speed and multiple heads represents the Greco-Macedonian Empire led by Alexander the Great.
Okay.
Remember the bronze belly and thighs of the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's dream?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. So this empire was even faster at conquering than Babylon.
Exactly.
Right.
Alexander's conquests were incredibly swift, covering vast territories.
Right.
But those 4 heads are significant, too.
Okay.
They foreshadow the fragmentation of his empire after his death.
So even though it was powerful and swift, ultimately it fell apart from within.
Exactly. And that's a pattern we see throughout history.
Right.
Empires rise and fall.
Yeah.
Often due to internal divisions and struggles for power.
Okay, brace yourselves.
Yeah.
Because beast number 4 is where things get really intense.
Okay.
Daniel describes it as dreadful and terrifying with iron teeth.
Wow.
No eagle wings or leopard spots for this one.
Yeah.
It's all about brute crushing power.
This beast, unlike the previous ones, is described in explicitly frightening terms.
Okay.
It corresponds to the iron legs of Nebuchadnezzar's statue and represents the Roman Empire, known for its military might and brutal efficiency.
But wait, the Roman Empire was eventually conquered, right?
Yeah.
So how does that fit with the prophecy?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Unlike the previous beasts, this 4th beast wasn't conquered in the traditional sense. Instead, it faded into history, transitioning into a different form.
So the Roman Empire, as we know it, may have fallen, but its influence continued in other ways.
Exactly. And that's a crucial point because it sets the stage for what comes next.
Okay.
The emergence of something called the Little Horn.
Okay, now we're getting to the part that really creeps me out.
Yeah.
This little horn sounds like something out of a nightmare.
It's definitely a disturbing image.
Yeah.
And it's one that we need to pay close attention to.
Right.
Because it represents a new power that arises from within the remnants of the Roman Empire, a power that will wield significant influence and oppose God's people.
So it's not just about conquering land and resources like the previous beasts. This one's got a more sinister agenda.
Precisely. This little horn is all about control. Control over ideas, beliefs, and even the very fabric of society.
Right.
It seeks to establish its own dominion in direct opposition to God's kingdom.
All right, let's break down the symbolism of this little horn.
Okay.
Because it's clearly a major player in Daniel's vision.
Yeah.
What makes it so different from the beasts that came before?
Well, first of all, it has eyes like human eyes, representing knowledge and cunning used for control.
Okay.
It's not just about brute force like the previous beasts.
Right.
This one's got brains.
Yeah.
And it also has a mouth speaking arrogantly, indicating blasphemous speech against God, and a desire to exalt itself above the divine.
So this little horn is intelligent, strategic, and manipulative.
Right.
And it's not afraid to challenge God directly.
That's right. And that's what makes it so terrifying.
Yeah.
It represents a force that not only seeks worldly power, but also actively opposes God's authority and persecutes his people.
It's like the ultimate villain.
Yeah.
The embodiment of everything that stands against God and his plan for the world.
Exactly. And as we delve deeper into the prophecy, we'll see just how far-reaching and destructive this little horn's influence becomes. Welcome back to the Olive Grove podcast. So before we delve deeper into this little horn and what it represents, let's revisit where we left off. We were discussing this unsettling image that emerges in Daniel's vision. This little horn arising from the 4th beast. The one symbolizing the Roman Empire.
And it's not just another powerful empire like the ones we've already talked about. This little horn seems to represent something far more insidious and pervasive.
Exactly. We talked about how this horn has eyes, symbolizing cunning and intelligence, and a mouth speaking arrogant words against God. But it's not all talk. This little horn takes action, and some of what Daniel sees is truly disturbing.
Well, that's what I'm eager to unpack. What exactly does this little horn do that makes it so terrifying?
One of the first things Daniel notices is that this little horn emerges from among 10 other horns eventually subduing 3 of them.
So it starts as just one power among many, but quickly rises to a position of dominance.
Precisely.
Okay.
The 10 horns represent 10 kings or kingdoms that emerge from the 4th beast's empire.
Okay.
Now, the number 10 in biblical symbolism often signifies completeness or totality. Yeah.
So could this be hinting at a global system with various power centers?
Yeah.
Not just one centralized empire.
That's a very insightful observation.
Okay.
It might not be about 10 literal kings, but rather a complex network of powers operating on a global scale.
Okay.
And from within this system, the little horn emerges, consolidating its power by overtaking 3 of the original 10.
Okay, so we've got this picture of a vast interconnected system with this ambitious little horn rising to the top.
Yeah.
But the text also mentions something really strange.
Right.
It says, the little horn tries to change the seasons in the law.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
That's one of the most intriguing and potentially unsettling aspects of this prophecy. On one level, it speaks to the little horn's arrogance and its attempt to usurp God's authority.
Like playing God, essentially.
Exactly. Trying to change the seasons could imply manipulating time itself. Perhaps establishing a new calendar, or imposing a system that disregards God's natural order and changing the law. Does that mean trying to rewrite God's commandments?
Yeah.
Establishing a new set of rules based on its own standards?
That's a very plausible interpretation.
Yeah.
It could be about imposing an entirely new moral framework that contradicts God's will. Redefining good and evil to suit its own agenda.
Exactly.
It's a chilling thought, especially when we see so many attempts in our own world to redefine morality and erode the foundations of truth and righteousness.
It's certainly a sobering reminder that the battle between good and evil is not confined to the pages of ancient history. This struggle continues to play out in our world today. And the little horn's actions serve as a stark warning.
You know, I've always wondered, do you think this little horn refers to a specific person, or is it more of a symbolic representation of a type of power or ideology?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that has been debated for centuries. There are different interpretations, some pointing to specific historical figures, while others focus on the characteristics and actions of this power, regardless of a particular individual.
So it's not about pinpointing a specific name or date, but understanding the essence of what this little horn represents.
What's important is that we grasp the deeper meaning of the prophecy. The emergence of a power that opposes God seeks to redefine truth. And persecutes those who remain faithful.
Okay, so we've established that this little horn is bad news.
Yes.
But it doesn't just talk a big game.
Right.
It actually takes action against God's people.
You're right. That's right.
Okay.
The prophecy states that the little horn made war with the holy ones and was winning. This points to a period of intense persecution and suffering for those who remain faithful to God.
So following God doesn't exempt us from hardship.
Yeah.
In fact, it might even put us directly in the path of opposition.
That's a powerful truth to remember.
Yeah.
Faithfulness to God doesn't guarantee an easy life. In fact, it often leads to opposition and challenges.
Yeah.
But even in the face of persecution, the prophecy doesn't leave us without hope.
Right, because even with all this talk about beasts and horns and global powers, we can't forget that this is ultimately a vision from God.
Exactly.
And God is in control. So what happens next?
Well,
does God just stand by and watch as this little horn wreaks havoc?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, the scene shifts dramatically.
Okay.
Daniel sees a court session taking place in heaven, and the little horn is finally brought to justice.
Okay. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this heavenly court.
All right.
What happens there?
Well, Daniel describes the Ancient One, God himself, sitting on his throne.
Okay.
It's a scene of overwhelming majesty and power.
Wow.
With countless heavenly beings ministering to him.
So even amidst all the chaos and terror of those beasts and the little horn, God is still on his throne, completely in control.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this court session signifies that God will not allow evil to reign unchecked.
Right.
He will hold the wicked accountable for their actions.
Okay.
The little horn, despite its arrogance and power,
is stripped of its dominion and ultimately destroyed.
Wow. That's a powerful image.
It is.
It's like a cosmic courtroom drama with God as the ultimate judge.
Absolutely.
But what happens after the little horn is dealt with?
Okay.
Does the world just go back to the way it was before?
No.
Yeah.
Something far more significant takes place.
Okay.
Daniel sees that the kingdom, rulership, and greatness under the whole heaven are given to the holy people of the Most High.
So God's people inherit the kingdom.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's not just any kingdom.
Right.
It's described as an everlasting kingdom.
Wow.
One that will never be destroyed. This is the ultimate victory of good over evil.
Right.
The fulfillment of God's promises.
Yeah.
And the hope that sustains God's people through times of trial.
It's an incredible message of hope and encouragement.
Yes.
Especially for those who are facing persecution or struggling to see God's hand at work in the midst of chaos and suffering.
You know what's interesting?
Even after witnessing this incredible vision of God's judgment and the triumph of his kingdom, Daniel admits that he was still frightened by what he saw.
That's really relatable. I mean, even though we know that God is in control and that good will ultimately triumph, these prophecies can still be unsettling and even terrifying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Daniel's response reminds us that it's okay to feel overwhelmed or confused when we grapple with these profound truths about spiritual warfare in the future.
But ultimately, the message of Daniel chapter 7 is one of hope and encouragement.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that no matter how dark things may seem, God is working out his purposes.
Right.
And he will ultimately bring about his kingdom of righteousness and peace.
And that's a truth worth holding on to, especially in times of uncertainty and turmoil.
Wow. We've been on quite a journey.
We have.
Through Daniel chapter 7.
Yeah.
I feel like we've covered everything from bizarre beasts to heavenly courts.
Yeah.
From the rise and fall of empires to the ultimate triumph of God's kingdom.
It's a chapter packed with vivid imagery.
It is.
And profound truths about the nature of power, the reality of spiritual warfare, and the hope that we have in God's sovereign plan.
You know, one thing that really struck me
Yeah.
is how this chapter isn't just some ancient history lesson.
Right.
It feels incredibly relevant to what we're seeing in the world today.
Absolutely. Daniel's vision speaks to something timeless, something that transcends specific historical events. It's about the ongoing struggle between good and evil, the seductive allure of power, and the unwavering faithfulness of God.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key takeaways that we can apply to our lives today? What can we learn from Daniel's experience and this incredible vision he received?
I think one of the most important takeaways is the reminder that earthly power is fleeting. And ultimately subject to God's judgment. Those beasts, no matter how terrifying or dominant, are ultimately overthrown. Their dominion is temporary. But God's kingdom is eternal.
That's such an important perspective.
It is.
Especially when we look around and see so much injustice and suffering in the world. It's easy to get discouraged. To feel like evil's winning.
It's true. But Daniel chapter 7 offers us a powerful antidote to that despair. It reminds us to look beyond the immediate circumstances and to see the bigger picture. The cosmic drama unfolding according to God's plan.
Another thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on spiritual warfare. That little horn, with its arrogance and blasphemy, its attempts to redefine truth and persecute God's people. It's a stark reminder that we're not just dealing with flesh and blood.
You're right. This chapter pulls back the curtain and gives us a glimpse into the spiritual realm. The unseen forces that are at work in our world, influencing events, shaping hearts and minds.
So it's not just about political ideologies or social trends. There's a deeper spiritual dimension to the battles we're facing.
And that's why we need to be vigilant to put on the armor of God, as Paul writes in Ephesians, and to stand firm against the schemes of the enemy.
It's a call to be discerning. To recognize the subtle ways in which evil can infiltrate our thoughts, our relationships, and even our culture.
And amidst all the challenges and uncertainties, Daniel chapter 7 ultimately points us to hope. No matter how dark things may seem, we know that God's kingdom will ultimately triumph.
That image of Yeshua, the Son of Man, receiving the kingdom.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful affirmation of God's victory.
It is.
And the hope we have in him.
It's a reminder that our ultimate allegiance is not to any earthly power or ideology, but to the King of Kings.
Right.
The one who holds all authority and will reign forever.
So even when we're facing trials and persecution, we can find comfort and courage in knowing that our victory is secure in Christ.
Absolutely. And that's the message we need to carry with us as we navigate the complexities of this world. Daniel chapter 7 is a call to be discerning, to be courageous, and to live with the confident expectation that God's kingdom will come and his will be done.
Well, that was quite a journey through Daniel chapter 7.
It was.
Thank you for guiding us through these complex and profound truths.
It's always a privilege to explore the scriptures, to discover the timeless wisdom they offer.
And for all of you listening, if you want to continue exploring the Bible with us, be sure to subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube.
Yes.
And for early access to our episodes and other enriching content, visit the My Christian Space website.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.